Most people believe the first $100,000 is built through high income, luck, or some secret investment strategy. They imagine wealthy people discovered shortcuts unavailable to everyone else. But the truth is much less exciting and much more uncomfortable. The first $100,000 is mostly behavior. It is built through repeated financial decisions that seem small in the moment but become life-changing over time. Most people fail to build wealth not because they are incapable, but because their daily habits constantly work against their future. Emotional spending, lifestyle inflation, lack of consistency, impatience, and financial disorganization quietly destroy long-term progress before wealth ever has time to compound. The dangerous part is that these behaviors often feel normal because society encourages them constantly. Spend more when income rises, upgrade your lifestyle, finance larger purchases, reward yourself emotionally, chase appearances, compare yourself to others online. All of these habits create temporary pleasure while silently delaying financial freedom. Building the first $100,000 usually has very little to do with looking wealthy and almost everything to do with acting intentionally. The people who eventually build real wealth often look financially average for a long time because they prioritize ownership over appearance. They understand that every unnecessary payment steals future freedom. This is why the beginning feels so difficult for most people. Early wealth building is slow because the numbers appear small. Investments grow gradually. Savings increase incrementally. Progress feels invisible for long periods of time. Most people become discouraged before compound growth has time to accelerate. That is why behavior matters more than motivation. Motivation disappears quickly. Systems and habits continue. Wealthy individuals often succeed because they continue making disciplined decisions long after the emotional excitement fades. They understand that consistency matters more than intensity. Someone investing small amounts every month for years will usually outperform someone waiting for the perfect moment or dramatic breakthrough. Financial success is often boring. It is repetitive. It requires patience while results remain invisible. But eventually, consistency compounds into momentum, and momentum eventually compounds into freedom. Another major reason the first $100,000 is mostly behavior is because income alone rarely creates wealth. Many high earners remain financially stressed because spending rises alongside income. This is lifestyle inflation, and it destroys more financial futures than low income ever does. Most people never intentionally decide to trap themselves financially. The process happens gradually. Someone receives a raise and upgrades apartments. Then they finance a newer vehicle. Then dining out increases. Subscriptions increase. Convenience spending becomes normal. Over time, almost every dollar becomes committed before it even arrives. That is why someone earning a strong salary can still feel financially trapped. Wealth is not built through income alone. Wealth is built through the gap between what you earn and what you keep. The first $100,000 requires protecting that gap aggressively. Wealthy individuals often understand this earlier than everyone else. They resist upgrading lifestyles too quickly because they understand retained capital creates future leverage. Most average consumers focus on visible success, while wealthy people focus on ownership. Ownership creates future income. Consumption creates future payments. That difference completely changes financial outcomes over time. Another important behavior is delayed gratification. Most people want financial rewards immediately. They spend emotionally because waiting feels uncomfortable. Wealthy people are often willing to sacrifice temporary appearances in exchange for long-term freedom. They understand that every dollar invested today can potentially multiply in the future. That perspective changes spending behavior dramatically. Another critical behavior is controlling emotional spending. Most purchases are not logical. People spend money because they are stressed, bored, insecure, overwhelmed, or seeking validation. Shopping becomes emotional relief instead of intentional decision-making. This is why budgeting alone rarely works long-term. If emotional habits remain unchanged, financial problems usually return. Wealth building requires emotional awareness alongside financial systems. People who successfully build the first $100,000 often become more disciplined emotionally with money. They stop asking whether they can afford something and start asking whether the purchase supports their long-term goals. That shift changes everything because it forces intentionality into every financial decision. Another critical factor is consistency. Most people dramatically underestimate how powerful consistent investing becomes over long periods of time. The first $100,000 feels slow because compound growth has not fully accelerated yet. Early investing often feels unrewarding because progress appears small relative to effort. But eventually, the growth curve changes dramatically. Once investments begin generating meaningful returns independently, momentum increases faster and faster. This is why wealthy individuals often obsess over reaching early milestones. They understand that the hardest part is building the initial foundation. After that, compound growth begins doing more of the work. Another important behavior is avoiding destructive debt. High-interest debt destroys wealth because interest compounds against people instead of for them. Credit card balances, financing agreements, and unnecessary payments quietly consume income that could have been invested for future growth. Wealthy people are usually extremely protective of cash flow because they understand flexibility matters. Every unnecessary payment reduces future freedom. Another important habit is financial awareness. Most people avoid tracking spending because they fear what they will discover. But awareness changes behavior immediately. People who successfully build wealth usually know exactly where their money goes every month. They review expenses honestly. They identify leaks. They reduce unnecessary outflow intentionally. Financial freedom is usually lost through small, repeated habits, not massive single mistakes. Another major difference is long-term thinking. Most people make financial decisions emotionally based on short-term comfort. Wealthy individuals often think in decades instead of weeks. They understand that small, disciplined actions, repeated consistently, become extraordinary results later. That long-term perspective allows them to tolerate temporary sacrifice because they remain focused on future freedom instead of immediate gratification. Another important factor is environment. People surrounded by constant consumption often struggle financially because spending becomes normalized socially. Wealthy individuals frequently surround themselves with people focused on ownership, investing, growth, and discipline. Environment shapes financial behavior powerfully because humans naturally adapt to social expectations around them. Now we need to discuss identity because this is one of the most overlooked parts of wealth building. Most people never build the first $100,000 because their identity remains tied to consumption instead of ownership. They associate success with visible upgrades rather than financial strength. Expensive cars, luxury purchases, vacations, and social validation become symbols of achievement even while financial pressure quietly increases underneath the surface. Wealthy individuals often think differently entirely. They view money primarily as a tool for creating future options, not temporary status. That mindset creates radically different behavior over time. Another major issue is impatience. Many people quit financial discipline because results feel too slow initially. But wealth building is not linear. It compounds. The early stages feel frustrating precisely because the growth appears invisible. This is where behavior matters most. The people who eventually succeed continue investing, saving, reducing debt, and building systems, even when external results appear small. They trust the process before the results become obvious. Another important behavior is automation. Wealthy people often remove emotion from financial decisions as much as possible. Savings transfers happen automated, investments happen automatically, bills are automated. Systems reduce the likelihood of emotional mistakes because fewer decisions rely on daily motivation. Another important principle is learning continuously. Most financially successful individuals spend years improving financial knowledge, understanding investing, studying business, and learning how money actually works. Financial intelligence compounds, just like investments compound. Better decisions repeated consistently create enormous long-term advantages. Another overlooked behavior is patience with simplicity. Most people search constantly for dramatic breakthroughs, secret investments, or shortcuts to wealth. But many wealthy individuals become successful through relatively simple systems, repeated consistently for long periods of time. Investing regularly, avoiding destructive debt, controlling lifestyle, inflation, building cash flow, increasing ownership, protecting future flexibility. None of these behaviors sound exciting individually, but together they become incredibly powerful over time because consistency compounds faster than most people realize. The final reason the first $100,000 is mostly behavior is because wealth building ultimately becomes a reflection of priorities. Money flows toward what people value most consistently. If someone values appearances, comfort, convenience, and instant gratification above future freedom, financial progress becomes extremely difficult. But when someone begins valuing ownership, flexibility, discipline, and long-term security more than temporary pleasure, behavior changes naturally. This is why true wealth building starts internally before it appears externally. Another important shift is understanding that freedom matters more than status. Most financially stressed people are trapped not because they earn too little, but because their obligations became too large. Payments reduce freedom. Debt reduces flexibility. Lifestyle inflation increases pressure. Wealthy individuals often prioritize reducing dependency because they understand freedom creates peace. Peace comes from knowing your future is becoming more secure instead of more fragile every year. Another important principle is momentum. Once someone begins seeing progress, disciplined behavior becomes easier because confidence increases. Savings grow. Investments compound. Debt shrinks. Stress decreases. The system begins reinforcing itself positively instead of negatively. That is why reaching the first $100,000 matters psychologically as much as financially. It proves the system works. It proves discipline compounds. It proves long-term thinking creates real results. And once someone reaches that point, future wealth building often accelerates dramatically because investments begin contributing more meaningfully to growth. The truth is, most people already know what they should do financially. The challenge is behavior, repeated decisions, daily discipline, long-term consistency. Wealth is rarely built through one perfect decision. It is built through thousands of intentional choices repeated over many years. Eventually, those choices compound into stability, flexibility, confidence, and freedom. That is why the first $100,000 is mostly behavior. Not luck, not genius, not shortcuts, behavior. If this helped, like and subscribe to the Daily Yield because we are building real success one step at a time.